I think that people should know that Northeast 2nd Street in its heyday was the heart of black Oklahoma City.
Before we start with our story on the Deep Deuce, it might be helpful to know about Deep Deuce, which was also called Deep 2nd, which was also called Deep 2. Nobody really knows how the names got there. It just seems to have naturally evolved. But those who lived during that time knew that it was the 300 block of Northeast 2nd Street. It was down in the valley between the two hills of the 200 block and the 400 block of Northeast 2nd Street.
The Deep Deuce. Well, it was the business center. You had a theater there, the Jewel Theater. You had hotels, the Youngblood and the Randolph drugstores. It was a business hub and a meeting place for musicians. And they had shoe shops and all of those kinds of things. And so many of the benefactors had businesses there, and they kept the musicians fed. So Deep Deuce was a very important part of nurturing our musicians during the early periods.
When I was a little boy, I guess 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, 2nd Street flourished, had clubs, theaters, had cafes, barbershops, pharmacies, drugstores. It was quite a thriving business community down there on Northeast 2nd Street.
Generally, what I found was that there were two faces to 2nd Street. You had the nighttime, which is when you experience Slaughter's Hall and the Lion's Den and Ruby's Grill and all of the musicians there. But during the daytime, I mean, it was business. I mean, you had the barbershops, you had the Randolph drugstore, where I worked briefly for a while when I was a senior in high school. And you also had the doctor's offices, the lawyer's offices. You had anything that you needed down on 2nd Street.
I'd heard about Greenwood. Most people left here and went to Tulsa. It was the rare ones that went to Oklahoma City. Because usually when people leave home, especially black people, they go to their cousins, relatives, you know, and they go where their cousin went. And, you know, you stay in the room, then you get your job or whatever. But my relatives was in Oklahoma City, and it was another kid here who had relatives. So we would go to Oklahoma City and work. But when I got to Oklahoma City, I was told to stay away from 2nd Street at 16. You know, but I went. We used to ride down through there. I rode down through there a bunch of times before I stopped.
But of course, Charlie Christian perhaps is the most outstanding one, because he brought to the jazz world the unique guitar playing. They said he made his first guitar himself when he was just a little child out of an old cigar box. And then, of course, his father and brothers were musicians.
I happen to know personally Charlie Christian, the great guitar player. And by the way, that young man actually invented the electric guitar.
No, I actually sat in with a jam session with Charlie once up in Ruby's Grill. We were just up there, no salary attached to it. We were just playing, you know, went up to play. You'd learn so much, you know, jam sessions, up there playing. And Andy Kirk played a dance at Blossom Heaths. And traveling bands, when they came through Oklahoma City and played a dance at the Municipal Auditorium or the Trianon Ballroom or Blossom Heats or somewhere, they would always come down on 2nd Street on Deep Deuce and jam with the musicians. And so the vocalist and tenor player in Andy Kirk's band, they had a guitar player named Floyd Smith. Floyd Smith thought he was one hell of a guitar player. He was kind of arrogant character, and the vocalist in Andy Kirk's band, the tenor player, they didn't particularly care for him, but they told him, said, say, Floyd, said, there's a dude over here in Oklahoma City that thinks he can play some guitar. I said, how'd you like to go over and show him, you know, really how a guitar's supposed to be played? And of course, Floyd, with his arrogant self, he was all for it. And so we were up jamming in Ruby's Grill, and somebody said that Andy Kirk and them were coming, so they told Charles, said, don't do anything but just strum chords while he's here, you know. And so we were playing, and they came up, and Floyd took his guitar out of his case and came up, and we greeted him. Of course, we had a half-gallon jug of corn whiskey we passed around, you know, all the time. And old Floyd sat up there and looked at Charlie and said, say, Daddy, you play Changes? Well, that was a song that musicians used to call on to, you know, challenge somebody with. Changes was a song, you play the tempo about like this. There'll be a change in the weather and a change in the sea. From now on, babe, there'll be a change in me. You know, it went like that. And so Charlie said, yeah, I try to play it sometime. So Floyd said, hey, let's play Changes round the corner, about like this. And so he started playing Changes. I don't know whether it was Wallace Thompson or Leslie Sheffield was playing piano that night. It was one of them. And anyway, he started playing the intro, and old Floyd got his guitar out, and he started playing. And he played 3 or 4 courses, and he turned around to Charles and said, you want some of this, man? Charles said, yeah, I'll take the next chord. Boy, and Charles fell in there like, like Chewberry on tenor saxophone, you know, with his guitar. Floyd put his guitar in his case, closed it up, went up to the bar. Oh, Charlie, it wore him out, ate him up, ate his lunch, man.
I certainly think it's without any research whatsoever, my belief is that it's one of the first places where blacks and whites mix socially in Oklahoma City. I think Joe King's may have been the first, but it was one of the early ones, and it started with the musicians before a few of us, the rest of us came in.
After I was married, my husband and I would go to Ruby's Grill. It was an eating place as well, and the artists used to come by there after they would appear in some other places and have, what do they call those? They just jam sessions. So we would come to some of those sometimes. But no, I remember some of the fraternities used to have dances at the Slaughter's Hall, it was called.
The fact that on Thursday nights, that was Maid's Night Out, you know, from working in Nichols Hills. And what they would do, they'd come in on Wednesday evenings and they would go to the beauty shops. They'd take up all of the seats in the beauty shops, getting ready for the big event on Thursday. And how they paraded, they dressed. They really dressed up and paraded up one side of 2nd Street and down the other side of 2nd Street and stopped in the drugstore to have an ice cream cone and rest a minute and socialize and then start all over again.
The band that I played with down there was Little Eddie Taylor and the New Breeds. And now Eddie Taylor and the Rhythm Aces. He's the man who gave me my nod. See, in order to get into this business, somebody have to grab you by the hand and bring you in. Because it's hard to bust in as an individual or as a group without somebody giving you an upper hand.
Lionel Hampton was here, and the old Warner Theater downtown, I played with him. And at that time, I played Hamp's Boogie. And he was quite impressed with that.
I can remember, for instance, a trumpet player taking off on his own, but somehow it fit. I didn't understand that, but somehow it fit with the other musicians. And then a saxophone player would get up and do the same thing, and the drummer might take off on a series, and somehow they played together, but I didn't know anything about it. At first it was just fun. I didn't think about the marvel of all this. It was just fun.
You had high achievers on 2nd Street, and there were lots of them. You had the Slaughters, Dr. Slaughter, you had the Finleys, you had the Bruces, Attorney Bruce, people who knew without a doubt, you know, that it was possible for them to live out their dream, to have a dream, to be visionaries.
But I don't think that enough praise could be given to the source from which many of us came, and that was that of our music teacher, Mrs. Zelia N. Bro.
We must mention Zelia Bro. She was a teacher at Douglas High School and influenced so many of the young musicians. She had a Douglas band, and she taught them instruments, she taught vocal music. She was evidently a genius.
She was just a remarkable, remarkable lady, and I do mean a lady in all the sense of the word. But she was the inspiration for so many musicians that came out of Oklahoma City School. And she was the first in the state to have a drum and bugle corps with her high school group.
Well, she would come to the schools and give not instrumental lessons, but vocal, had us singing songs, you know, in school. And I guess that with her knowledge and her experience, she could just discern if someone had an ear for music. You know, first of all, I guess that was the way.
Thrill is gone, babe. Gone away from me. Coltrane went on this job, started played for an hour, blowing his horn. He played, then when he got through playing, he turned around and said, "What we're gonna do next, man?" And the guy said, "You just played 3 hours, man. The gig's over." That wasn't long for Coltrane sit when he preparing himself. He'd sit there and play all day by himself. They had to wall him in another room. You know what I mean? The family, so the family could. You can imagine that. Man get lost in his stuff so much, 3 hours goes by and he say, "What's the next song?"
At that time, they had territorial bands that traveled around the country, and they played jazz, mostly swing. They also did blues too. And the Blue Devils were nationally known. As a matter of fact, that's where most of Count Basie's band members came from. In fact, when Count Basie recalled having seen the Blue Devils for the first time, all he ever wanted to do was be a Blue Devil. 2nd Street at that time was where it was all going on. It was the business district by day, and at night it was the cultural experience. That's where Jimmy Rushing was born. That's where Ralph Ellison grew up. Great people came out of 2nd Street. 2nd Street had everything to do with it.